All right. So you have a paper that's titled Pedigree Notes. You're going to have that in front of you as we go through. You are going to be filling in your notes. A lot of it is not fill in the blank. Some of it is going to be application where we're going to be doing some things. So let's go ahead and put our notes in front of us. All right. So looking at your portion, my notes are going to be a little bit different than yours as far as it's not going to have bullets, but it will have the information. So you have to pull out that information and put it where it belongs on your notes. So this is, again, helping you build some good note-taking skills. Alrighty, so looking at pedigree. When you hear the word pedigree, what do you think of? Dogs, right? Normally you think of dogs because dogs have different breeds, and then you can breed them with other dogs and things of that nature, thinking of breeding. But that's exactly how we are. We're bred from our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents, and so when you're thinking of pedigree, you think of dogs. Sometimes people want purebred dogs so they can know they have a pure dog, and people sell dogs so they can know they're going to get their money for it. So they go through the pedigree to see, is this dog really pure? But you all have pedigrees because the pedigree is basically showing the relationship of your family. And that's what the first bullet is saying. It shows the relationship within a family. But not only that, it helps you to see how genes are passed from one generation to another. We looked at a Punnett square when we looked at your mom and your dad. But from a Punnett square, you also can go further back and see, okay, why did my dad have these traits? Why did my grandmother have these traits? Why did my great-grandmother have these traits? And so on and so forth. So that when you have children, you can see, not my children may or may not come out looking like my husband and I. They could look like my great-grandmother. You also can go back and see, why do I have hazel eyes, but my mom and dad have brown? Where did that come from? So it sees how genes are passed from one to another. And then again, it also sees how you are related. A pedigree also is a tool that genetic researchers and counselors use to identify genetic conditions. These are different diseases like sickle cell or Down syndrome, things of that nature. They go through and they look at that information. When I was pregnant with Tyla, I specifically remember going to the doctors on one of my appointments, and we're sitting in a room with the counselor, and she actually pulled out a chart and started to create a pedigree for my husband, for myself, and then for us together to see if there were any predispositioned diseases or any diseases that are within our lineage, to see if it's possible for our child to come up with that. Because what happens is, there's a couple things. If a woman is pregnant and not too far along, they would want you to be prepared for that information so they can prepare for a diagnosis or prepare for some type of treatment if it's a possibility that your child may come out with some type of genetic disorder. They also let the parent know, because in the parent, and where we live right now, it has the choice to continue the pregnancy or abort the pregnancy. So all this information is there for that. All right. Pedigree also aids in making a diagnosis. So if there is going to be some type of genetic disease, it helps them to be able to say there is a strong possibility, so now we need to be ready. So if the baby is born and has symptoms or has characteristics of certain diseases, they can be able to diagnose it because they saw it within the pedigree. And it also helps the family look at if there's a risk of a genetic disorder. Sometimes if people are really, really prepared, getting married and deciding to have children, they go through a pedigree first so they can know if there's a possibility, and they can make a decision, okay, there's too much of a possibility for our child to come out with a genetic disorder. We might want to adopt or not have children, or there's not enough chance of a possibility, so we can go ahead and have children. Does that all make sense?
Yeah. So if it's a strong possibility that your child will come out with Down syndrome or something like that, you know how you said they come up with a diagnosis and all that?
Diagnosis is basically saying that once that child is born and they have those symptoms, they can say this is Down syndrome because we saw it in the pedigree.
Oh, so you can't like prevent it from?
No, because that's a genetic disorder with an extra chromosome. Yeah. All right, you have a chart that looks like this. We're going to talk about this in just a moment. You saw something like this on your quiz, and we used the Punnett square to kind of break it down and determine it. When all else fails, you go back to the Punnett square information that you knew to build on that. But before we go further with this, I'm going to show you another short video. You're not going to be writing anything. You're just going to watch it. And then I'm going to ask for some recalled information that we have here. And we're going to look away from this chart just for a moment. And underneath, I put a key that says on pedigree. And we're going to jot down what the information here is. And then we're going to go back to that picture and we're going to label it. All right? So first, what represents a female? A circle. So a circle represents a female. What represents a male?
Square.
Square. What is connected to the male and the female representing that they are married?
A line.
A line. What kind of line?
Horizontal.
Horizontal line. Now we do know that there are some instances, a lot of instances, where a male and a female have children and they're not married, and we would still put that information there because a pedigree is all to see how genes are passed through and to see the possibility of genetic disorders. So you would only do a pedigree between a male and a female if they have offspring or if they're looking to have offspring. All right? Then what represents the show that these are these people's children? A bracket. What type of bracket? I mean, or what type of line besides a bracket? You have a vertical line or a bracket. So it almost kind of looks like fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The circle or the square is going to be what, meaning that they have the trait?
Shaded.
Shaded. Now, what about if they're a carrier? Half shaded. I want you to add that information that I have up there in purple. So, shaded that they have the trait, half shaded equals they're a carrier. And if you do not remember what a carrier is, you want to jot that down in your notes as well. What's a carrier?
Someone who has a recessive gene but doesn't show.
Good. Someone who has the recessive trait, gene, but doesn't display the trait. Very good. Any questions about this so far? What does it look like if they do not have the trait?
It's shaded into
You just told me it's shaded that they have the trait. It's not shaded. It's blank, yes. Not shaded means they do not have the trait. What order are the children placed in? Oldest to youngest. So when you're reading the paper, you read from left to right. The children are placed oldest to youngest, going the way that you read it, left to right. And with the pedigree, we're always looking at specific things. You're not looking at a bunch of things in one pedigree. So a pedigree will show you the key for what trait is being looked at. All right, now let's go back to that picture right above. That looks like this, not the one below, but the one above. And we're going to go ahead and label this. What represents the male?
Square.
The square. Go ahead and label the male the dad. Label the square. You can put it on next to it or inside if you want. But I probably put it next to it because you won't be able to write inside the shaded one. But it's your note, so whatever makes you comfortable. Which one is the mom and the female?
Circle.
The circle. These notes are easy enough, right? All right. What does that line in between represent? The marriage. Who are the sons?
The square.
Which ones? Good. Which one is the oldest son? This is the oldest son. This is the youngest son. Very good. All right. Who are the daughters? The circles. Is the daughter the oldest of the 4 children or a son?
Son.
Is the daughter the youngest of the 4 children or a son? Therefore, we need to list it oldest to youngest going this way. What's up, Renisha? Who had his hand up? Cam. Sorry. Never mind. Are we good so far? Okay. What does the shaded daughter, shaded second child, which is the first daughter, what does that represent? She has the trait. Whatever's being looked at, she has it. Sit right there. Where are your glasses? Yes, you do. All right. So the third daughter, or I'm sorry, the second daughter, but the third child, I should say, she's a carrier. So what should she look like?
Half shaded.
Half shaded. Go ahead and half shade that. Does this make sense? Okay. Now, remember, a pedigree is showing the relationship. It's like a family tree. So it's going to show generations. Some people go through a pedigree to see if they have any royalty in their family. Like, where exactly did I come from? My son did a, funny story. He did a family tree, and it was called, he named it, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but he said it didn't fall far from the bush because he did like a family bush. And the apples represented people that were alive, and the leaves represented people who were dead. And my husband's had apples going all the way up to his great-great. My poor little side, the apples stopped at my mother and my father. It's like, my husband's family lives forever. Probably because they're so mean. And my family doesn't live that long because we so nice. But he was able to go back far enough to see my son actually has access to his great-great-grandmother. A lot of us don't have access going that far back, but he has access, and his great-great-grandmother is still moving around and getting about. She's not sitting down old in a nursing home. She's 94. And his great-great-grandfather, 3 years ago, we celebrated his 96th birthday. But he passed away 3 years ago. But he was 96, and he was in good health. So you can go back through generations. So when you look here, this is your generations. The top portion, these would be the top of the generation. So when you start off, so this is going to be what generation? The first generation. So you want to next to that label that with the Roman numeral I. That's how they're labeled with Roman numerals. The children of the first generation would be considered the second. These numbers are here. Why? The first child and the second child. Now these are their children, but these are their spouses. Then you come down here. The grandchildren of the first generation would be considered what? The third generation. Those grandchildren, and again, these numbers again would represent the first. Notice the numbers here. This is not the first child of this family and the second child and the third child. These are the first grandchild, the second grandchild, the third grandchild. That's how it is. Understand? All right. Then the great-grandchildren of the first generation would be the fifth generation. Does that make sense? Okay. And then it can go further and further and further and further and further, however far you can go back. Like I said, I can only go back as far as my grandmother. I'm sorry, fourth. My bad, not fifth, fourth. But you can go further. Yes. Janae. Okay. All right, go ahead and flip your papers over. Now we're going to do some application. We're going to be identifying the traits. Can I move from here?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and identify the traits of these people. So I'm going to be asking you to do some things. You're going to be labeling some things. This is an incomplete chart. You do not need to put this key. But what do the shaded represent? People that have the traits. What does the blanks represent? They don't have it. And if it was shaded, what would that represent? Carriers. Okay, so that's just a review there. Now, in this example, all who have the trait are going to be homozygous recessive. Sir, this is not a new word for us. What does that mean, homozygous recessive? They're the same. But the same what? Alleles, but what kind? Capitals or lowercase? Recessive, lowercase. Good. All right. In a moment, you're going to see if you're able to identify all genotypes of this family. What I want you to write on the right-hand side is this key here. F is for normal. Capital F is for normal. Lowercase or recessive F is for cystic fibrosis. Now, cystic fibrosis is a disease where there's like a nerve disease where they're in constant pain through their nerves. However, how many of you ever heard of the medicine Lyrica? That's what people with cystic fibrosis take. Fibrosis. Okay, so looking at this information that you have, what is the father genotype?
Locate, I mean,
Speak. Recessive, recessive. What about the first daughter, second child? Recessive, recessive. What about the first child? Recessive, recessive. Why? So why are they recessive, recessive? Because they're what? They have the gene. If you have the gene, then you have to be those traits, and it's going to be homozygous recessive. All right? But we're not done. What if two of the children are recessive recessive? The first child and the second child both have cystic fibrosis based on they inherited from their father, but it's not only inherited from their father. What does their mother's genotype have to be? Think back to a Punnett square if you need to think back in your head or even draw it. Why?
because
She has to include one of the other recessive genes. Very good. Good question, because we weren't done. So because she is dominant recessive, what should her circle look like? Half shaded. Yes. Hold on. No, it doesn't matter what side. Usually it's the right side, though. But it's okay. What does the third child, second daughter have to be? Dominant recessive. Why? Recessive recessive. Why can't she be recessive recessive? She doesn't have it. How do you know she doesn't have it? She's not shaded in. What about the last child, the youngest son? Why? For the same reasons. So therefore, so what should they look like? Oh, sorry. They should all be half shaded because they are carriers. So far, so good? Okay. Looking at the second example, and again, this is application. This is an example of carrying the PKU gene. And what that was, we talked about, remember we talked about artificial sweeteners, like if you can taste the, and diet soda, sugar-free things, you taste that type of stuff. Now, what that is if people who have the PKU, they put aspartame in that, that's the artificial sugar, that could actually be a poison for people who have PKU, but that artificial sugar could kill them, essentially. So that's what PKU is. So we're looking at the gene trait, the gene passing on of PKU. Now, we already know that the shades mean what? They do have it. The clear means what? They do not have it. So there's our key again. All right. Looking at this information that we have here, what is the second child or the second daughter? I'm sorry, second son, my bad. Recessive, recessive. And what about the daughter-in-law? And notice this is the daughter-in-law because she's married to the youngest son. All right? And their first grandchild is obviously also recessive, recessive. Any questions so far? So considering the fact that the parents, first generation, passed on, and one of their children are recessive, they have the PKU. What does the genotype of those two parents have to be, Latavia? Dominant recessive, because their child gained both the recessive gene. So again, they don't have it, but they did produce a child that does have it. So far, so good? All right. Looking at the last child of the first generation, so we're looking at the second generation, and we're looking at the youngest son. With all the information that you have, what is the genotype of the youngest son? And that would be this son here. Shania, why is he dominant recessive?
Because he's not shaded, which means that he does not have the trait.
So why can't he be dominant dominant?
I think he's dominant.
Think it through. Look at the picture.
Because his parents are not dominant. None of his parents are dominant.
Well, his parent does have a dominant. They could have both passed on a dominant dominant to him.
But they weren't shaded.
But you thought it through though, so don't be down on yourself. You were thinking it through. Kwame? He and his wife produced a child that's dominant. I mean, that's recessive. So therefore, he had to be carrying a recessive gene. So before we move on, what should the parents look like? They should be half shaded. Hold on, we're not there yet. What should their youngest child look like? He should be half shaded because he is a carrier. Now, before we go to the third generation, let's finish off the second generation. Their firstborn. Going back to the Punnett square. What could their firstborn's genotype be? Dominant dominant or dominant recessive. Because he could get either both, or he can get one from one parent and one from the other. So he could actually be dominant recessive or dominant dominant. We're not going to shade him in because we don't know which one he is. He doesn't have any offspring.
So if nobody, okay, so if you go to the doctor and stuff, if they not married or nothing or work produce a child, how do they know?
In their DNA.
Or they have tests?
Got it? Now, if they had another child and they produce children, then we can kind of rule some things out there. Now, looking at the grandchildren, we're looking at the third generation. We're looking at the two youngest granddaughters. These two. What is their genotype? Why, Michaela? Why are they dominant recessive? Or?
Oh no, the dominant recessive because they don't have the trait, but their dad has the dominant trait, but their mom has.
Exactly. Their dad has a dominant trait, but their mom has two recessive traits, so therefore they have to be dominant recessive. They cannot be recessive because they don't have it. So therefore, that's their genotype, and what should they look like? They should be half shaded. Any questions about that? All right. Looking at the last one, Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease is a neurodegenerate disease where your nerves start to deteriorate, basically, and it causes a lot of pain, and it also starts to cause mental disorders because where does your nerves come from? Your brain. So if they start to deteriorate, the nerves in your brain are starting to deteriorate, and it is a serious disease. So this is a we're looking at genetic disorders. That's why we're not looking at sexually transmitted disease or diseases that are communicable, meaning passed on from one person to another from contact. This is things that passed on through your genes. So when we're looking at this, I want you to take a moment and with your group, I want you to discuss the information that you have, knowing the key, knowing all the information, how we did the first two. See if you can figure out the genotypes of the first, second, and the third generation of people.